It's 6 o'clock, 3 to 6 o'clock. Okay. How is everybody?
Good.
Good.
Christmas is down,
That's an
pipes are
accomplishment.
wrapped.
Oh, did you do your bathroom?
We have so many Christmas decorations that we lost pay money to store them in a pod. And
Oh,
it comes to our house, the day before Thanksgiving Day, after a week away, and it comes back, and we put it back on.
oh wow.
You're
You're very festive.
For, yeah, our next year's present needs to be a bigger pod.
That's amazing.
Still like stuffing the upstairs closet like Tetris or something. Out of there.
We need pictures or it didn't happen.
My Facebook page.
Okay. I'm gonna find you then.
I think it's 6 o'clock, what we call the workshop to order. After we worked on this before, started driving around and looking, and I guess I kind of think we may want to take another look at it. And a number of things in here too is because I think this 16-foot height, especially in single-family neighborhoods, depending on the size of the lot, put it up against the back fence as close as you can get. It's a pretty good block of a view of everything. And also, if you'll notice in these ordinances, it talks about you can have no more than 2 accessory structures, which means that you could end up having the combination of the 2 being larger than the house, which is also going to take up certainly a lion's share of the rear yard. So, and then I got to looking at the R50 lots and the depth of those, especially the ones that are just 5,000 square feet, especially if they've got the required setback. There's not much room back there, especially, and it's really close. The backyards are not as deep, so if you put up something, a structure 16 feet tall, back there, again, as close as you can get to the rear property line, you really, you can, show home movies on the backside of it with the neighborhoods. So I think we may want to look at this, and we've looked at several things even, and one of the things that we get a problem with is that because of the zoning doesn't necessarily mean that all the lots are that size. We've got R50 zoning that have 10,000 square foot lots in it. We've got R75 zoning that has acre lots in it. So it really makes a difference in terms of how things would look based on accessory building and structures. So I just ask that we may want to take another look at this and really evaluate this and see what might be the best approach. We talked a little bit last time about maybe we need to look at it based on the size of each individual lot, which is a nightmare for staff and everybody trying to get things approved and so forth. But it certainly makes a big difference in terms of the size of the lots. And also, the 16-foot height, even though it's the peak of the roof kind of thing, it doesn't mean the roof can't be flat. Which again gives you a big box that's 16 feet tall in the rear yards too. So anyway, I just thought it might be worth a look before we ship this to the council to consider recommendations. And I'd ask staff to give us something to kind of look at. And we've got a couple of drawings here, especially this is a 20,000 square foot lot on the first page.
Yes, sir.
But notice how large the secondary structure could be. And that's almost a half acre lot. So, and if it's 16-foot peak's one thing, but if it's 16 foot, it's flat, it's a whole different ballgame too. And so, and we may have to even consider looking at it in terms of what percentage of the rear yard open space can be taken up by the structure. And then look again at the idea of, based on its height, what we're restricted to. I'm just not sure. We may want to make it have to be farther set back from adjacent property lines. If you get on the top ends of height restrictions, just not be so intrusive to the neighbors, because we certainly got those kind of things in the city. So anyway, that's why I asked to have this workshop. Let us think about this a little bit more and see if we want to consider something different than what we currently have here.
I've got a question. Why would you want a structure, why are we allowing a structure to go into the setback and be within 6 feet of the back fence line? I don't understand that. Why that's being allowed?
And you know, we don't, if it's a certain height we've got here, it has to sit back so far.
Right.
But even that, with it's large as 16 feet, and especially again, if it's not a peak roof of some sort, and if it is deep and it runs parallel to the street, it's just a solid brick or a block wall to look at, even if it's part of it's the roof line, it's a pitched roof. Yeah, those are the kind of things I think we need to do a little rehash here to see if that's really what we want to allow.
So I have a question. On this R20, it says 50% primary structure not to exceed 100. So this is 50% of the primary?
Those are the existing regulations. You can occupy
Okay.
60% of the rear yard.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's-
if you flip
yeah,
to the
This
next
is what
sheet,
it currently
That's
is.
the current.
So it seems like to me, this, and I'm sort of always looking forward, but
The
this
next page is
is more,
is the draft proposal.
okay. Right, yes. But why would it be at the back?
yeah, that's
Property.
part of what Mark's
That's just an
talking about.
example.
So Mark, that's where it could be based on the ordinance. And again,
Worst case scenario.
yeah, it's kind of a worst case scenario, especially with 16 feet high. So I think that's the thing we need to talk about. And I really think we've got to take a really hard look at these R50 lots, especially because their rear yards are so small to begin with. We're gonna have to think about limiting those to like one of these Lowe's buildings that's not over 7 feet tall kind of thing. It has to be set back a little bit. Because I don't think building a structure in the R50 of any significant size, especially if it's 16 feet tall, just doesn't seem like.
Well, some of those little bitty R50 lots, I don't think you can get one in, because once you get the 10 foot from the building, because you can't be closer than 10 foot of the building, and even if you just use the 6 foot, there's probably not much space there to put a, even a little bitty building, you know?
Well,
Because some of those have very little rear yard. You know, if they have the minimum of the 25 foot rear yard setback, or even 20, you know, they have 20, you have the 10 and the 6, well, it leaves you 4 foot, you know? Yeah, so I mean, some of them, I think,
and we,
if they're the minimum, but like you said, it could be R50 that's a bigger lot, so it's kind of hard to.
but, yeah, it's really difficult, like you say, until you really look at some kind of diagram, it's hard to always get a good picture of that. Of course, the lots aren't always, 75 by 100 kind of things either. So that has a difference to it.
Well, to solve that one issue you're talking about, instead of trying to categorize it in a zone per se, categorize it by square foot, so say 5,000 to 7,500 square feet, you can do this. If you're 7,500 to 12,500 square feet, you'll have this. So it's not necessarily tied to zone, like you said. sometimes you got a R75, but you got a 12,
It's got,
13,000 square
it
foot lot.
just makes it more difficult to control and get building permits and all those kind of things, assuming they come in for one
Yeah,
Mhm.
but if it's broken down for them lot size,
Range of lot size.
then you
Well,
don't care
that
about
makes,
zoning.
again, that makes more sense if you're trying to make it where it looks compatible with the lot and the structure. I don't know that I have any disagreement with that, other than it's probably a bigger burden on staff, but how many, do we have a lot of people come in, other than new construction, they come in with secondary structures, during, 12-month period or something?
It's more of a building services, they come to us for BZA,
Yeah.
building services,
Oh.
they do have quite a few. But, you know, if they come from us.
But it's not typically a full detached garage with workshop, those are more rare. And a lot of times we see that in our historic township, if they're doing like an expansion to the primary structure, then they might also do a detached garage with workshop or
So they wouldn't
storage
necessarily
area.
come to land department,
Not unless
this
there's,
is a BZA.
Not unless it's
Yes.
a problem.
I mean, we see the packet before it goes to the Historic Preservation Commission. A lot of times they need that certificate of appropriateness, but if everything's in line with the setbacks from the underlying zoning, it's simply a building permit after that.
What are you proposing in R75?
Well, other than I know what those proposed. Other than I still feel like that, again, I think it depends, the zone. If you classify it by zoning, it makes it really difficult, to me, compared to trying to look at it in terms of the square footage of the lot.
Potentially unfair for the homeowner or property owner that wants to do something, they actually have a huge lot, but they're in the wrong zone.
It's almost gonna have to be on the square footage of the lot.
Well, it seems to be the most fair way to approach it, even though it may be the most heartache for staff to do, as long as there's enough
Still,
requests.
still part of the square footage of the lot, but also 50% of the main structure.
I don't know, 50%, that's another question. That's, well,
I know
with
you're
this 50% of the structure is one issue, but if we allow more than one structure, that makes it a different issue.
Well, I wouldn't allow two structures that are 50% of the main structure. I would cap it some way, cumulative or just one, I don't know, something like that. I wouldn't allow two that were 50%.
But the main reason why we're doing this is to make sure that the neighbors aren't being bothered.
Oh, that you don't have
I
a
mean, I don't really wanna be
that you-
telling people how to
No,
run the property.
no, it's really to be intrusive to the neighbors and the neighborhood, and not look compatible in some respects to the neighborhood.
Don't have something,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
something
that-
looming
that's-
over everybody
That
around
just
you.
doesn't make sense, and it's unfortunate people will do that, but
And we're gonna see a lot of redevelopment in Grapevine over
that's what I'm
years.
saying, and.
It's gonna be more and more happening.
It's timely that y'all are looking at this because of the redevelopment that's coming. There's been a couple of issues that I've heard about. One is over here on West Texas Street, and Larry, you and I both talked about that. The guy built a separate structure in the backyard, and it is like a box back there, steel studs. And it's every bit of 16 feet tall, and it's right against as far back as he can go. And it's in the older part of town over there, and the neighbors around it, I mean, you can see it from 2 or 3 lots away, and it's something that shouldn't have happened, but it has, and that points to something in here. And to me, one of the things that is important to look at too is the height of the structure. Having a mean height has been a problem since that language was first put in there. We need to have it, what is the absolute top height that we want, not an average, because if you've got, the eave of the roof right here, and you've got a gable roof, and it goes way up there, that roof can be higher than what we really want to be.
Just a parapet.
Yeah, it
If
is,
it's a
and
flat
for,
roof, it can be as high as.
Right, right.
So,
yeah, it can be really high, and so for an accessory structure to be 16 feet high in any neighborhood, to me, is just not a good thing, but especially in R50, 775, I mean, and there was 75 over there, and it's huge, the biggest thing that entire neighborhood.
But it complies with the current.
It complies with the current ordinance, and that's why this is before all of you. The other one that I have really heard about is over here in the historic district, And it was a home that is being remodeled and restored. And the homeowner picked the house up and raised it up 2 feet. So the height of the building goes up from the plate line, okay, not from the ground. And so these windows that were down here are now up here overlooking a 6-foot fence into the backyard of the neighbors, whose bedroom just happens to be back there in the backyard, the pool is backyard. And so you don't just have the first story windows that are looking in there, now you've got the second story, which is almost completely glass. And so, as you might imagine, that has become a very, very uncomfortable situation for the people who were there to restore their home to be faced with that. So that's an issue that we need to deal with, and I don't know that we want to preclude raising up a house, but maybe we do.
Well,
We
is that
certainly need
something,
to address the height of it and where those windows may be, and as far
they
as
just
height
go
of the
into
fence.
permitting, like, for those people to do that, they just, when you permitting, you got a building permit to
And
raise
comply
it?
with the existing ordinances, yeah.
That,
So
that's
there's
not,
several things to consider here.
that's not part of this line.
Correct.
But the
that's
height would be.
The height would be
Yeah.
though, but that's one of those you may have to start looking at it from the ground level with height.
Yeah, and where it's measured from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if the lot is on a slope, then it needs to be measured from the highest point, where it, around the house. So there's 2 or 3 things that, thank you for bringing this up.
My memory is really fuzzy. Did we do something months ago that had to do with tiny houses, residences, mother-in-law?
Yes, accessory dwelling units,
Okay,
yes.
so that's the ADU, and
Yes.
what did we do about that?
So, they're only permissible in the R20 zoning district. They're limited to 750 square feet. They have to have an off-street parking space, similar building materials and architectural styles, primary unit, and it has to be set back.
But that,
And it was only 1 story too.
but if
correct.
we allow 2 secondary structures, it still doesn't, you don't count the ADUs, so there would be 3.
The ADU would count against.
Okay, so it counts against it, okay.
The way that this is drafted now, like this is just a draft to get you guys,
The other
Talking.
thing we might have to think about is how much, what percentage of the rear yard are the structures taking up? I know we've got a whole lot, we've got square building structures, percentage of the lot, but you may need to have some consideration of the rear yard as well, because once again, they're not always cookie cutter kind of things and so forth. And some of them are set way back from the road, so the rear yard may not be quite as deep as what the lot would appear to be in terms of that. So if you talk about the size of the lot, you gotta be careful that you don't ignore the ability for the front yard setback to be farther than just the requirement. So if it's set back 70 feet instead of 30 feet, you cut 40 feet off of the rear yard for the same structure, so that has an impact
So,
as well.
like on this example here, the secondary structure going all the way back to the 6 foot,
yes, sir.
it exceeds what the building coverage area would be. Is that taken into account, like,
It does not exceed, actually,
It doesn't exceed.
the yellow is additional area that could be covered by building.
on this? The yellow only goes to the building setback line.
Correct, because they're saying if it was part of the primary structure, that was,
The primary structure,
they're just trying to indicate how much.
That's what's left.
that's what's,
Yes, that's
Right,
what's
that's
left.
buildable.
I know, that the yellow is what you can actually cover and still have the 40%.
Right, it's
My
still
point
with
is
the
this-
structure.
But the secondary structure now goes beyond that point. That yellow should change.
Well, this is a maximum kind of situation here.
Correct, it's a 60%
This is a
maximum.
maximum secondary structure. So if you take the secondary structure, the primary structure in the yellow, that is within the ordinance. You can do what's development there in the current.
But I see what you're, so he's saying that the yellow only goes up to this line right here, is what you're saying,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, you look at these two.
Right.
To the rear yard
So
setback.
this
That's
is
right.
yellow, so he's saying if you take this percent of this building, take it up, it would finish out, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's talking about
Okay.
volume of space.
Volume of space,
Yeah.
because all the concrete gets
Yeah.
right, so it should adjust, something has to be adjusted here in this calculation.
Okay,
It needs to be thought of, right?
yes,
That's my concern with asking, if you can exceed, or if you can pull that structure into the building setback, now you've got a different kind of calculation you've got to adjust for. Right, so,
It's just the drawing that doesn't really look right.
And then
well, yeah,
count
but that's where
for
people get confused.
building coverage.
yeah, two different questions, no, they don't,
Oh, okay.
pool decks do not.
Those that are developing that, they have to think back to when this was developed originally. The only secondary structures we usually had there were these little storage buildings.
Yeah.
On more
Yeah.
and so
That's it, right.
And so that was what prompted it to begin with, and it just.
And now they want she sheds and big
Yeah, they
sheds
want
and
everything.
big, structure, right?
That's cute.
Yeah.
One more question. So if in the highly unlikely situation where someone wouldn't want to build the biggest house they can have on the let's say they buy a huge lot, it's got a little house on it, they buy it because they want a big secondary structure.
Mhm.
They could still go to BZA and make the case.
They could, but when you're going to BZA, it's for either a variance or special exception. With a variance, they need to prove a hardship of some sort, special exception, they don't
And
have
just
that
because you
same.
want it is not a
Hardship word that I
special.
bought the
Yeah.
lot without reading the
Yeah.
ordinances, like my clients always do.
So, I mean, there is a path forward, but it's a very difficult path. We do make recommendations, and if there's not a good argument for it, like there's some weird condition of the property, you know,
But just the fact that it's a huge lot, and there's gonna be plenty of room, it's gonna be level and all that, that would.
we have plenty of properties by the lake that are huge lots, but they're encumbered half of the lot by a flowage easement, and it's, you know, that flowage easement allows it to be flooded, the core has the opportunity that you can't really do anything in there except for maybe a small shed, if that, with core. But Mr. Oliver's correct, I mean, the way the existing ordinance was written was assuming that reasonably people would not fill their entire rear yard with a garage or workshop or gym that would exceed the size of the home that they live in.
And it's clear that if they build a detached garage, that is an accessory.
Yes,
See, that's one of the other things. Even in this ordinance that you started here, we talked about allowing to have about a 6'8" ceiling level on the second story.
breezeway,
And I think anytime you start making that, people can walk in there, it's gonna become a room of some sort. And not just storage particularly, I don't know how to do anything about that. But that's also one of the reasons we need to think about height restrictions. Because they're gonna wanna do that, if they build a garage, for instance, they're gonna wanna have at least storage up there for certain. But then you get that pitch of the roof, if it's got any kind of pitch to it. 16 feet, the way we measure it now, it can be pretty high.
I would say the closer it is to the building, to the property lines, the shorter it has to be. Or graduate, you know, if it's the closer you get, make it shorter, you know, and we'll tell you, you gotta put it more in the, you know, I don't know.
Well, they have that
Get
45
closer
degree
to
angle with design guidelines for setting these buildings back. They usually, that's on the primary building.
Right.
They're all used for the primary building. We could do a similar,
Something like that,
right? Maybe make it a steeper degree, right, push that building back.
Yeah, that would keep that 16-foot structure from being right on the property line, like it is out over there.
One thing that it seems to me a little bit of a road is that, this is the second page, how close this little structure
That's what I'm
is
saying.
from the back property line. It seems to me it could match up with the side property lines and it would be a little more reasonable. If we're getting further off that back property line. because you know, we,
They couldn't be in the rear yard setback.
They have taken out the rear yard setback.
Yeah, if you changed it from just the 6 foot minimum to the actual rear yard setback.
Especially the size of the structure, because with something that's gonna be 6 foot, it's more like a shed, you know, like a little.
Right, if you're going to put a small,
15 square foot, something that just
something
keep your
like that.
lawnmower in, that kind of stuff.
Right, but if you're building a structure that's, you know, has a significant height of any kind, you know, that's 10 feet high, it needs to be more into the property.
How would you do that?
So you just have a sliding scale on if you're 6 foot, it's, can't have this height, if you're 10 foot this height, well, you know, a
Well,
sliding
I think
scale,
we're talking
something like
about
that.
the rear yard, if you take them out of the rear yard setback though,
Right,
eliminate the ability to put a 7 foot high small storage building in the back.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I really care much about that being there.
yeah, you know, something like that, but if you're, to have something taller, it needs to be closer in.
We just wanna put it like a threshold.
But you might not be able to do it based on building to building distance.
You may have to look at
Something, I mean,
something about,
you need to do something.
it can't be over a certain height, it can't be over a certain square feet.
Right,
If it-
right.
If it exists in the rear yard setback.
And then that would allow the little,
Yeah.
the little lawnmower building.
Yeah, I'd show the little.
But only if it's within a certain, like, so then you have
Then you have
distance
to,
from
right,
that
Well,
other
I'm not
building.
sure if it's, most people set that maximum there, that if it's anything else, it's gotta be out of the rear yard setback.
oh, then you're getting your 25 foot in.
Because
Right.
then we take care of some of that.
Mhm,
And it makes it a lot easier for them to manage too.
I agree with that. I get to
And
know
then
the rear.
they can calculate the footprint for what their maximum area would be for
Based on
the
if you
building.
come in.
Based on the distance
Yes.
from the main house, distance from the back, distance from any other structures.
Yeah, cause then you would have to come into the yellow line, and you would have to come into that yellow line, and it can be bigger if it's in here, but if it's back there, it's a little bitty. Little bitty one on the building.
What is your thought about these, about having two structures?
I'm okay with it, because like I said, if you've got the, say you got your little garage, but then you need that little extra additional space for equipment, or if you got a little garden house or garden shed or something like that, I mean,
A small,
yeah, cause it'll
Well,
be to scale.
Again, I think somebody mentioned it a while ago, I think one way we can address that is look at it in terms of the cumulative square feet.
Right.
Of the two structures would be certain size. So that way you could have one that meets that square footage, or you could have two that they cumulative amount of square footage. That seems to be fair about that part, because it shouldn't change much in terms of how much of the rear yard they take up space.
And then I think you want a distance, like, put a minimum
Yeah,
distance
they have to be-
between,
Right.
between the buildings for maintenance and safety of storage if you're putting in gasoline or whatever in one building, you don't want to look good.
Buy the middle building from Lowe's, just typical size, or are you supposed to have a permit for that?
If it's over 120 square feet,
it's
yes.
big enough.
But if it's
10 by 10, pretty good size.
If it's 10 by 10, they can just put it out there, and that, if it's on a slab, they have to have a
That's
permit.
that,
But if it's on skids or something like that, or it's a,
You can just,
they
because
don't.
it's not permanent.
It's
So
not
it can be
permanent.
moved.
But we don't have anything that regulates whether they can be
They do, they need to be the 6 feet from
It
the
still
rear.
has to comply with the
Yes.
accessory building, even
Yes.
though it's not required to have
Back out.
a permit. Yeah.
okay, so if someone's coming in, like let's say it's an individual, not a company, if someone comes in and says, okay, I wanna build this garage or whatever, what do they typically come in with? Like the survey of the property, does the average person know how big their lot is and what's the setback?
No, typically, they're going to be referred to the building permit application, they're going to need a survey, they're gonna need the plans, the elevations, the ceiling plans, they're gonna need the foundation plans. They're going to have to hire a professional to design it for them, and then provide the plan set
Let's
for the
say
building
I'm the
permit.
professional, I'm a
Okay.
builder, I'm gonna do my own. And like even under the current law, do you need proof of the lot size?
Yes, they provide a signed and sealed survey.
Okay, so they have to
Yes.
do that, so no one could say you're making this a lot more expensive for me
Well, they can
Correct.
say it.
Well,
They can see it, but,
They do.
well, but the change, I mean,
and
they've
there's,
always had to have a
yes,
survey, and because, you know, you can look up the old plans and they can build on your house.
Mhm.
So the true requirements aren't gonna be, like
different,
what you have to bring into the city isn't gonna be more onerous.
Unless it's changed though, they're pretty liberal about, look, if you've got an original survey of your property, they're gonna take that.
Like from when you buy it.
Yeah.
They're,
right,
they're gonna take those kind of things, so they don't always have to go out and have a new survey done, all those kind of
And
things.
then they would have the record of like when I built onto my house, they could see that I added this many square feet to
That
it.
should be
They would
part
have that.
And they'll require that drawing to show where everything is.
So
but
that,
they're legally only required to retain it for 2 years per state law, so you may not have it if your house was built 20 years ago. You might have record of the permit, but you may not have the plan set that the builder had to submit.
but even though we're changing what's allowed, we aren't really changing the requirements
No.
to build the second.
No, not at all, no. And there would be a certain number of inspections done by that department from start to finish. So it's not just inspected at the end, and if you're too close to the property line, they go, oh, well, I mean, that's gonna be inspected before,
Yeah, board surveys.
yeah, they pour the
Before
foundation.
they even pour anything.
Okay.
So on the height, do we wanna put something like, so we don't have these big flat buildings, let's say 16-foot high, and structures similar to primary residency or that neighborhood, or what's? I think you also don't want to have people put big old flat.
Well, again, it depends on how tall it is and how intrusive it is to the neighbors, you know, some of them might not be that, it could be 10 feet tall, it may not be anything that's that, it's set back far enough from the neighbors and everything, it may not be as big an issue, especially if we don't allow them to build it in the rear setback.
I think that if we're bringing in more towards the middle of the property, then we don't have as much, and it's not bothering the neighbors as much, so the type of roof being pitched versus flat, and the height is, you know, for every foot you come in, it makes a big
We
difference.
still gotta consider the height issue, but I think farther away you are from the side yards and the rear yard, the higher it can be, not be. When it's
We had a regulation one time that for every increased, 1 foot increase in height of the accessory building, they had to step in 2 more feet away from the property line. So that's a 1 to 2, and that helps control the height pretty well, and that was,
Yeah, and then what we have here,
Is it?
It is.
we've got that as part of this
Yeah.
too, we did,
If you go higher.
we go higher.
but that was when if it's over 16 feet.
That was,
But if we're talking about if it's over like 8 feet, then you start stepping in, and that will that'll resolve that, this over here would not have happened, so that's where perhaps the line of demarcation needs to be, not the 16 feet, but the 8 feet that you were referencing a moment ago.
do you think, you know, and I don't think we're looking at some of the right things to approach it with, but I guess you think the council's gonna view it as we're reviewing it now, I guess? Or are they just gonna think, well, you're just trying to, keep them from doing what they wanna do with the property kind of issue? Think that we're gonna be able to convince them why we're trying to protect this?
I think they will be open, they have also heard about the property over here, and they've heard about this one, they will hear about it more, they'll have some pictures. And I think if we are able to explain it well, they're not gonna spend the time on it that you all do, that's what you all for. And I appreciate the fact that you all go through this basically line by line, because this is going to affect a lot of people. And the council relies on you all to do your kind of homework. Equally important though is explaining the ramifications that you're trying to get a handle on. Because these 2 situations over here have been very bad, especially the one over here on the east side, because it's affected that whole neighborhood. One over here on the west side, one over here on the east side has affected probably one property owner in particular. But there's a couple of others that have been affected as well, but we have heard about it. And so since we know there's going to be a lot of redevelopment, and that's what you all are trying to address, you're looking into the future, and that's what you should do, you're a planning commission in addition to zoning. And so when we know that we have a problem, it's your responsibility to try to correct it and revise ordinances to address it so we don't have that same problem in the future. And that's what you all are trying to do, and rightfully so.
Let me throw something out and see how you feel about this. Let's talk about a couple of things so we can get some more direction to staff, so they don't just have to try to guess what we're talking about here.
This is a tough one.
Yeah, but to get some sort of consensus about, is everyone reasonably okay with the idea if you've got a Lowe's 10 by 10 structure with a shed that's not over 7 feet tall, we'll say, that it can be in the rear setback.
Yeah.
If it's less than 120 square feet, now what's in the ordinance now is 120 square feet.
Oh, for the,
To require a
for the
permit.
small,
For the
for
small,
the actual.
it can't be larger than that, yeah,
Without a permit.
without a permit. So that's what I'm talking about.
Within the, they can set it back within the 6 foot setback, are you saying?
No, well, I'm not just within the rear yard setback,
Rear yard, thank you.
but not closer than 6 feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Right, does that sound reasonable? It has to be at least 6 feet off the rear side yard. And it can't be more than 7 feet tall, which is only a foot, but they're 6 feet away from the fence.
Yeah, I
So
think
it's not-
they're, some of those are gonna be 8 feet.
I know, yeah,
tall.
what is the typical one that you buy, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's about it. You're right, be tall.
yeah, but some of them are 8 feet, especially the ones that are 10 by 12, most of those
Well, the privacy fence is 8 feet, right?
Yeah, you can
The
have a privacy
maximum.
fence of
Well,
8
but
feet.
you're putting that burden on the
I'm just saying for the
homeowner.
neighbor, I'm just saying for the neighbor, I mean, they could put 8-foot fence, you'd never even see that 8-foot
Well,
thing.
then
so-
the neighbor's gotta spend money, I'm not sure that's.
No,
Yeah.
I'm saying if that guy set up a thing, so maybe
Yeah.
8-foot instead of
Yeah,
7.
right, I understand, yeah, that's true, but, I'm not sure everybody's got 8-foot fence.
And if you're 6 foot off the property, I think.
Right.
Yeah, if you're 6 feet back, you know, we kind of, that helps take care of that. So,
I think if we try to regulate that more, that's.
I think we're gonna waste our time.
Yeah.
So, are you okay with the 10 by 12, like we've already got as the minimum that you can, maximum you can have without a permit? So if we do a 10 by 12, it can be in the rear yard setback, but it must be at least 6 feet off of the rear part of
The property line.
and the side yard property.
So it can sit in the side yards that.
I was thinking
I
about
would
just
still be
six
six
feet.
feet.
the back,
Still
Sorry, say,
just off the back property.
well,
And whatever the side yard.
I would just want it off the side yard.
I would think.
It needs to be low,
Yeah, if you want it on low.
Oh, this, yeah.
off the side and the back.
The thing is, they're not permitting those, and they're gonna put them wherever they want until somebody
Somebody
complains.
right.
So you just gotta have
But
something
if
in
it's
place
not-
when they complain, you
It's
can say,
not
you gotta
permanent
do
unless
this.
you move it to
Yeah,
the
that's
side. So the height, you wanna go to 8 feet?
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
That's, cause if it peaks like that right in the center,
Yeah.
so you can walk in and out of there, you might even have a little
Yeah.
bit of storage in there.
It can be in the rear setback, but it has to be at least 6 feet off the rear and side yard or property line.
Right.
So these are basically the non-permitted.
Yeah.
Just the non-permanent. And then are you still okay with Mark's suggestion about not allowing any permitted ones in the rear yard setback?
100%.
Yes.
Everybody's okay with that?
I mean, you think 120 square feet, that's pretty much a one-car garage. You can start, you can build a one-car garage, 120 square feet.
But what are you talking
I'm
about?
saying we wanna get that off the.
Right, right,
okay.
okay,
So,
okay.
so yeah,
Yes, yes.
definitely. I like the 16 feet still though, like, but that needs to be like the limit, like that's the peak, that's anything, nothing goes
Well,
above
but you
16.
can't stop them, but you're back to allowing the flat ones there, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah, but on an R20, if I'm pretty far away from the other guy's
Well,
lot, 16 feet goes to your
you
lunch.
still are have to talk about size of lots and stuff like that, I agree, we need to talk about that. But I'm just saying as far as the, not having anybody have it in the rear yard setbacks, minimum setback, that no one can build as an accessory structure back there.
Right.
That clears up this problem.
Mhm.
That's 14 feet.
And so, then again, I guess the other question is, where you still feel like we need to look at it in terms of the lot size, the square footage of the lot. In other words, if you've got a 10,000 square foot lot, you can build X, up to X square feet. Or if you've got a 20,000 square foot lot, you can have, is that still what you?
So I have a question for staff, just so that I understand. The current proposal that we have, the change that we're looking at, where all of our secondary structure size limitation is based off of the size of the primary structure?
But the limit would be a not to exceed, so, and it's based off the zoning district, not the lot size, just as proposed in the materials. But it's 50% of the primary structure, but not to exceed 500 square feet.
So
For
the
like
not, the not to
R500.
exceed is from the zoning district, the primary structure could be different.
The primary structure could be different.
What are we talking about? We pushed it in from the backyard, but what about the side yard? We're letting it be 6 foot or whatever the side yard setback is, you know, because then you could still have that 16-foot tall
Yeah,
flat
It's just the
structure,
side yard
6 feet.
instead of the back.
Yeah, then you're just a bit,
I
I
think
mean,
you gotta
that's
be
down.
careful about the
Yeah.
side yard
It's down
setback,
because it's
it's,
still.
it could be more intrusive than the rear yard, if you're far away from the rear yard.
So I think we kinda have to look at that too.
Yeah, no, I disagree. We gotta look at the height, any setbacks from the side yard, how close it can be to the structure, we talked about that, I think we said 10 feet.
10 feet minimum distance between buildings.
Well, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's,
That's good.
That's building.
Building
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, but I don't think that should be on the side, I don't think that should be able to be built on the side.
I agree. Yeah.
But the side yard could be very small is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It could be 6
Some of
foot
them-
too.
Some of them are only 3 feet,
Right,
some
right, it
of them
could
are
be-
only 1 feet.
Right, if it's a zip, so it could be right there if we don't put some more limitations on the
I
side.
think you gotta look at the setback of the structure, and not just the side yard, in terms of the accessory building.
So maybe have it line, are you talking about within the, so were you saying maybe do it this, if this was it within these lines, or where do you?
Well, that's what I'm saying, we've
That's
got,
what
we've got to come up
I'm
with what we're gonna talk about in terms of, based on the size of the lots, and what those side yard requirements are. You know,
Because they're different on each
Right.
zone.
That's right.
Shouldn't they pretty well match?
Not
Well,
necessarily.
Especially on the side yards, is there a reason for these accessory structures not to have the same one that's even?
Well, I think we all agree they ought to be at least that much. I think we're talking about if it needs to be, because of the height, does it need
And
to
then
be?
step in further
Right.
with
Does
the
it
height.
need to be
Right,
farther?
right,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Height.
That's all we're saying.
We just wanna say 6 foot, when you say 6 foot from the back, just 6 foot from the side too, I mean,
Yeah, I
because
know.
basically it's all the 8 foot, right? I mean, and then everything else, we're gonna start going into the
Yeah.
bigger structure.
Yeah, no, I don't have any issue with that, I think that 6 foot ought to be, especially for the minimum
Yeah.
setback. And that ought to again be based upon how tall you build the building. So we can address that based on that and move it farther back if it's too tall.
So if you have a detached garage, I mean, that seems to, I mean, that, I would want it like, pretty far over to the side. So I don't wanna us to draft anything where if people have a detached garage, they have to turn into it as opposed to going straight into it.
That's gonna be more of a concern for R5 and R75
Yeah.
lots.
Well,
I mean, you see what I,
you don't
I
see
see
many detached garages on all.
Except for historic ones,
Except for
Ones that
the
go on
historic
Church Street.
Well, that's, in the historic district, there are some.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing is that, you know, if you go and look at most of these, the new developments in the Old Town area back here to the east especially, most of them have a rear garage. And it's all the way at the back. I still haven't understood how it gets to be all the way at the back. How do they have a structure in the rear yard setback?
Because it's a secondary structure. For our current ordinance, you can put it back there, that's the
if
problem.
they prefer.
you know, new development or
It's
existing
redevelopment.
redevelopment?
Yeah. Or if there's not already a structure there about putting them there. but that's another issue, I think.
I'm gonna have to leave here in about 10 minutes and go to the other meeting. One thing that I like in here is the limitation on the secondary structure size in terms of square feet. Example, I live on a 2.5 acre lot, a little over 180,000 square feet. 40% of that is a little over 43,000 square feet. And I have to take out the square footage of the house. So if a secondary structure were to be built next door to me or even in my backyard, it could be 40,000 square feet.
You have a lot of trees back there.
And if it were 6 feet from the property line next door, and I've got this 40,000 square foot monstrosity, that's what we could do. So the percentage of the primary structure, I think, is very important to consider in what you all are doing.
Well, it's appropriate because it actually pushes them to actually build on their primary structure. If you want to add square footage, build it right on your house.
And don't call it, it's either a bigger house or it's a secondary structure. I don't think we can cram those two together and still call it an accessory structure. The final thing, this is also gonna go to the height. And I think somebody, maybe you, Jason, mentioned you didn't really have a problem with that 16 foot.
Other than as long as that's the cap, like right now it's higher than 16 feet, it's gonna be 18, 20 feet based on
But it
where
needs
it's
to be stepped in from that side property line, which would give us 40,000 square foot structure so that it's not on somebody's. And I realize you're gonna step it in anyway, but I use that as an example just to sort of bring it home there and make it real about what it could be and as you apply these numbers. Thank you.
16 feet, 2 stories.
No, we're saying one story.
It's a lot, one
One story
We're
is
only
16.
allowing, well,
Well,
we're saying
No,
it,
it could
you know,
No,
You know,
we're allowing them to build storage space that has a 6 foot
6 foot 8 inches max.
ceiling height on the second floor, but it still can't exceed the 16 feet total.
Because if you think about the floor trusses, you've got a 10 to 12 inches there, then you got the, the joists up at the top that take up space, so you might only have an 8 foot ceiling, 6'8", but you're pretty close to 16 feet by the time you're
yeah,
done
you're
anyway.
putting in the,
And then can you put dormers up there?
Could you just have to be the 6 feet attic space, can you like,
You don't have to, that's just the max.
That's just what we have in here.
I thought it was 16 feet was high.
That's a lot for the neighbors next door to be looking at.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think, can they still use it and maybe not have to have all that attic space or?
Well, it is, I mean, if it's a garage, you're gonna see it as a neighbor, I'm sorry, you're gonna see it's a garage, it's gonna have one time, it's got 2 car garage, it's got a massive structure of
It
their
doesn't have
own.
to be 16, no, we've got one. We've got a detached garage, 1.5 car wide, and it has a peak roof like that, but it's not 16 foot tall. And it doesn't loom over everything next door. I can bring a picture and that'll give you a
Well, mine's
visual
that
that
way
might help,
too.
but it can be done. It doesn't have to be 16 feet tall.
It's not 16.
doesn't have to be a bench like this.
No, it
It
We
doesn't.
have
could be a
one
low.
like that, this floor, I think it's like 14 feet.
I think what they're
So
saying
don't
is it
know-
doesn't need a full staircase where you can walk in without bumping your head
Right.
to put stuff to
That's not-
store.
I don't know that we need that much.
Yeah,
Well, if you only have 6 foot 8 inch max, you're barely able to stand there anyway, 'cause typically the roof.
It's an
comes
8
like
foot
this.
ceiling on the inside,
Yeah.
just like it is in the garage, and attached to the house, then it's got this little attic up there.
I mean, your 8 foot is on the lower level.
It's only a 1-story garage, yeah. It's
That's what I'm
1 story.
saying, you don't have 8 foot above that.
No,
If you have a 10 foot ceiling in your garage, you're out of luck.
Yeah, you're not gonna have any room up
Yeah.
there.
You're just gonna have crawl space.
You come over and look at it, it's full of 2 motorcycles and a riding lawnmower and all sorts of tools and workbenches. Important stuff.
Okay, well, I think we still need to give us some more direction. But let's at least look at R50.
Okay.
And some drawings to kind of see how that will lay out. If that's even feasible, to have an R50 that they can't build a structure in the rear yard setback. Just how big could it possibly be?
Because we could get some typical,
If it's a 550
typical
by,
existing
yeah.
in the house on there and see what you can fit in some of them.
So this example on the screen, this is a new 5.0. Now granted, this has a PD with some different setbacks, but this is a large, 3,000 square foot home. But if you're now making the rear yard setback the same as the primary, they would have a very small, maybe shed that would be purposeful.
What's the rear yard setback on the home?
But that one may,
10.
10 feet.
the 6 foot exceeds the building line.
Mhm.
Am I wrong?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, there's PDs on this one.
There's a PD on this one. We've
Okay.
had a very hard time finding new builds on lots that actually don't have a planned development or some other extra thing that was asked for it, so. I believe this is from Dove Station, just as an example, which had the 15-foot rear yard, but, I mean, with what we're proposing tonight, if they had to have a 25-foot rear yard,
Or
they wouldn't be
whatever,
able to do it on this
or
lot.
whatever their rear
Yeah,
yard
so
building
whatever
line
the
is.
requirement is based on the zoning.
Okay.
Right.
Would be required rear yard.
Correct,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, it would only be 10 feet on the
yes,
part five.
yeah.
So there really isn't much place to build anything on that lot,
No.
other than the small,
They can
Low-
have a Lowe's.
yeah, like a tough shed.
but that's probably all we need to live in house.
Mhm.
If you're building the biggest structure you possibly can fit.
They've already built out their
They're making
lot.
that choice.
Right.
I mean, they're putting a 6,500 square foot house
Yeah.
Yeah,
on,
so-
on the,
I don't think that's the.
That's the lot
No,
size.
That's the lot size.
but
That's
still,
That's the
Oh,
lot
okay.
size.
okay. It's on
Still, that house looked like it was pretty good size, didn't it?
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a fellow saying the whole thing.
what is it?
This is an example of an R7.5 home that had BZA approval, but so if we were gonna say 25 feet here and 6 feet on the side, this whole building would have to shift this way, and then it wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be able to.
Well, it
It
could
wouldn't
be
be-
the 10 foot, so I mean, they could still build something.
Yeah, it could be, could
That's
be
the
that,
25 feet.
it has to be longer, but not as deep.
So the rear,
That's the rear yard
They
building
couldn't
line.
build it, it's real.
It depends, unless it's in a PD and change.
why is it so, that's not, okay, in the back, 25 feet.
Rear yard setback for the primary structure.
Well, that's a bummer. I mean, that kind of, because we were thinking it was more like 6 feet, but.
Well, no,
Well,
that's,
that's the setback we had before, but we're talking about not allowing them to build a structure that can be 16 feet high,
Right.
sitting back that close to the back property line.
So
You can see how obtrusive that would be to the rear property.
yeah, so the neighbors get a break, but then the homeowner
Yeah.
could maybe have it if they walk out their back door, they've got their secondary structure.
Well, they could actually, make it longer and not as
Yeah,
the rectangular would be different.
but that just may be the homeowner's
Yeah,
option.
Mhm.
The only option they have is to have it really close to their house as opposed to as
As
far
close.
back in the backyard as they.
So can they put that structure right at the end of the driveway?
it could be up to 10 feet.
As long as it's 10 feet from the house, and it looks like it might be,
It would be
based
That
on,
says
10
10 foot
10 foot 8
it says
inches.
10
So it
foot,
could
so
be-
it could
It
be
could
there,
be
yeah.
in this area.
Well, it
If
could be
that's-
there unless we do something with the side yard setback based on the height.
Right.
What's the side yard setback on this side?
It should be a minimum of 6 feet. It says a 6-foot building line.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you go to the edge of the concrete there.
You might not
Well,
even get a
it
detached
depends, if
garage
it's
in
60,
there,
if
but.
it's 16 feet tall, we may not want to allow it to be 6 feet to the side yard.
Right.
Cause it's gonna be really close to the neighbor's house too.
So I think the question is, do we want to restrict it so that they have a higher 16 feet? Or do we want to allow them to go further back and have a lower height? You see what I'm saying? I mean, we're trying to accommodate the height of 16 feet, but then they have to be right in the middle of their lot.
That's the problem by restricting them out of the rear yard. You take away the lion's share of most of the rear yards.
Right.
Unless you do the graduated thing we talked about based on the height.
Mhm.
And you could be, now we could always make it, it can't be closer than 10 feet or 12 feet, and then if it's taller than so.
So if you're only encroaching like 5 foot into the building setback, it's not that big of a deal, but you're only gonna go 8 foot off that back line.
So you would not prohibit it, but you'd require it to be out of the rear yard setback.
You're saying
No, we're
The full
saying
16
it's
feet.
instead of coming in all the way to 25 too.
based on the
Maybe
height of the structure. If it was
Okay,
only gonna
okay.
be 10 feet high, you might let them get within 12 feet of the rear
That's right.
fence.
So I think that's the thing is we're trying to say everything has to be 16 feet, but then
Yeah, I think we
So I
can
think we need to
adjust the
accommodate,
height. Yeah, we can use the height to give us that
It's a
range.
sliding
Right,
scale
right,
again.
Because
right.
that way they can
Just
build a
sliding scale,
larger
this is what I'm hearing.
structure back there as long as, because then it's still not gonna be obtrusive to the neighbors if we reduce that height.
Yeah, but it really limits them to be able to do something if we say, oh, they can't do setback in a couple times.
So what is the purpose of a rear yard setback for the primary structure?
It's usually been to give a distance to your neighbor and to have a place,
To build an accessory building.
well, not necessarily an accessory building, but to have a yard for a family to enjoy.
And so we're talking about letting this area for the family to be filled up with a secondary structure that basically is for storage or to park a car or something like that, rather than to be living space, is that right?
Yes.
So it'd be
Because
interesting.
they've got a choice and the neighbor doesn't have a choice of having.
Yeah.
The
The neighbor didn't have a choice.
The interesting part of that is, if you look, it looks like a lot. And if you, when you realize that everybody's got that front yard setback, there's no structures in it for anybody. So that's, like, but that's a lot of what the open space is. Because if you look at that over here at the data table, that there could be as much as, the maximum impervious area could be 7,400 square feet.
And that lot shown there is a little different too, cause it's a corner lot, cause it has a 30-foot and a 30-foot. That's
Sure,
double
yes.
frontage, that's, you're showing a double
So-
frontage lot also.
Yeah.
It's a corner lot.
That's right.
But what that has built, yeah, it's a double frontage, so it's slightly different than a typical in the middle of it.
But what I'm saying is they could actually build, that building could be another 800 square feet
Can we actually figure?
if you meet the maximum area it can cover. That could be a 1,500 square foot building.
It'd be almost as big as primary.
That's what I'm saying, we gotta be careful about that because, but again, it does take away the whole concept of a rear yard. And it does, everything that's open space is in your front yard. And,
Which nobody uses.
which they don't use for that purpose, unless your house is placed somewhere.
But then again, aren't they probably building these buildings for something they want, like a workshop
Just
or
what they-
a
Well,
hobby
that's-
shop? or-
Absolutely,
That would be what they could do
Or
with their
a shed,
property.
she shed.
yeah.
And usually that's what they're kind of going for, is a mixed
And,
use
you know,
type.
I think he has that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing to do.
You have a she shed.
I used to.
So, I just, that, you know, but again, that's the property owner has to decide, do I want a playground apparatus out here? Or do I want a shed out here to do other stuff with, you know?
They have a playground for a while, then once their kids sleep, then they build
That's
themselves
exactly
in.
right.
Yeah.
There's all kinds
Everybody had a trampoline, and as soon as that kid got
Yeah.
a thing left.
Absolutely, couldn't give it away.
Right.
Broke down.
They disintegrate in the sun here.
Right.
Or fly away when you have a
Yes.
good.
Oh, yeah.
I think the majority of the time you see pools, like outside of town,
Right.
you're gonna see more pools and those types of neighborhoods. Over
And-
here, you're gonna see something
Yeah,
different.
if you,
And you're making a choice,
and
you're
like,
making a
just
choice.
like the last one, that had the pool there, they pretty well wiped them out other than anything other than just, you know, the Lowe's building back there.
Yeah, it's a choice you make.
Again, but it's, they need to be able to have the choice.
Pave their backyards and they can put the boat there.
I also don't want to restrict them either, so that's kind of.
Yeah, we want to give as much flexibility as we
I
can.
bought the house, so.
And not, again, hopefully they would have the same negative feeling if their neighbor built a 16-foot high
Building, yeah.
next door to them.
Yeah, but not everybody's like that.
Not everybody's like that.
So maybe we don't need to limit it to the setback as much as limit it to the height.
Well,
I think we
or
need to
allow
have the
the setback
graduated
farther
scale.
if it's a shorter structure.
You know, but I still don't think it needs to be 6 foot, maybe you start at 10 foot or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'd be further back than six.
Yeah, it needs to be
Because six
further
is
than
really,
6.
really
My
close.
house is 10 feet off the rear.
Your one that you built. See, I mean, something more like that, 6 feet's fair,
Did you get a
maybe
permit for
10.
I sure did.
That's what he says.
that? America, is that true?
It was built before our time, she could say, I wasn't here.
So I think 10 foot would be reasonable to match,
But then it comes down to how tall it is, you know, if you're gonna build it tall, it comes
Yeah,
down.
again, I think you can let it, you can
Close
close
to
it.
something like half the building setback area.
Something like that, I mean, there needs to be some sort of number.
And then they can encroach into part of that setback area as long as the height is not too much.
Yeah.
And I guess,
Formula.
well, we're gonna have to have something we can see visually.
There's gonna be tables.
It's not just a table, we almost need a cross section to be able to look at, here's a house, it's 2-story,
Backyard house.
here's a backyard, here's a shed, and the shed's 10 feet, 12 feet,
Yeah.
and then how far back can it slide based on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
height restrictions.
It could,
And-
several typical laws.
And again, I don't know, we'll still have to decide if we're gonna try to do it by square footage. It may not be necessary to do it by square footage if we do it this way. Then it can still attach to the zoning category, which would certainly be something.
But then.
We still need to have maximum square footage.
I still think this
Okay.
is, like this 50% of the primary not to exceed.
Yeah.
I mean, I still
Yes,
think
I still
something like
think
that,
yes,
if the zoning,
Yeah.
And then
Size
max,
not
and
to
then
exceed.
cube, the numbers cumulative.
yeah, with the number of stories.
You're gonna have two.
Okay.
The ultimate
No,
goal
no.
here is to not necessarily restrict the homeowners, but to keep gargantuans being built.
Right, right.
So I mean, do we need to be as detailed?
yes, because if you're not,
Cause there's
Then
always
people
gonna
are
be a
gonna do what
question.
I mean, how
it's
many of
gonna-
those gargantuans are there? I mean, we
but
know
all it
two
takes
of them.
is one, all it takes is
I
one.
think
Well,
Sharon would say
well,
one's
well,
enough.
Yes.
Wait
Yeah.
a minute now, but you gotta understand now, if we do what we're doing here now, this would also impact these redevelopments on these rear garages too, in terms of their height based on how far they set back to. So that's new, that's not
Yeah.
currently the issue. So it is gonna have a different impact too there as well. Now, the other thing you gotta be careful about, and notice, you just said, you wanna make it where it can't exceed, the structure can't exceed 50% of the primary structure. But you can have two.
Right.
So it
But I-
can, so it
Has to
can
be
then total.
cumulative.
It needs to be cumulative, that's what it needs to be cumulative.
But,
Per, yeah, needs to be.
okay, so now you have taken, so this is where you want to bring that up. But what that does, you have penalized single story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Why?
my house is 2,700 square feet. My rear garage in the building with it there is 1,500.
It should be based on the footprint of the house, not total story. Not total
No,
story.
square footage, I'm talking about square footage.
Yeah.
But if it was 2-story, I could add 5,000 square foot house
Well, no, he's saying base it
on just the.
on just the
on
footprint,
On the first floor
footprint.
First
building
floor.
area,
Which is what it says.
Because that's basically what you're worried about.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying,
so instead
based
of
on
gross
what it
floor
says
area.
here.
Well, then it needs to be named, said a little bit different, because I agree, it needs to be on the,
Yeah, it should do. Yeah.
So this says limited to a maximum size of 50% of the gross floor area of the primary structure. So
But it
it's
needs to say
it's two-story,
well, it doesn't say, doesn't need to say gross,
It
Yeah,
needs to
just
say, it needs to say
first
the
floor.
first
footprint.
floor.
the
Footprint.
footprint.
Because they have
But
to
that's
include
gonna,
patio.
that's
Because they
gonna,
get double, because they get
I'm gonna tell
double
you,
up on
you
a.
better start looking at some examples of that, because you're fixing to really knock down the size of some of those structures in R75 and 12.5, because the 2-story structure is almost double story.
Right.
And so now you cut their ability in half. So I'm just saying, you gotta
Basement
be,
doesn't count either, right? So
I guess that would be
basement's
that'd be the ground floor. Anyway,
Does not include
these are all issues that
Yeah, we
really,
do need to look at what we're doing and how it affects all these, like,
they're different, they're different.
especially in the historic districts, that's where most of this, so much of it.
And-
Have David look at some of these recent ones.
They also have additional restrictions in Appendix G that limit it to 500 square feet for the detached garage gym.
That's true,
workshop,
and
And then 200 square feet for the shed, although they do allow a variance through the Historic Preservation Commission to combine those two to make one.
That's what it takes.
Yeah, so it would be like 750 max, which is in line with our 7.5.
But to go back to like what Sharon was talking about earlier about that you looked at this house, a lot of times that happens because of drainage problems.
Yes.
And those houses were originally built too low. You got water flowing through them, which was fine because it was a different type of system back
Yeah.
then. But nowadays, you're probably gonna look at the house almost put in half in some cases.
I don't think we're gonna be able to address
That's
that
another
issue with
issue.
No,
this.
that's just a different issue,
Yes.
but
But it is
you know,
something
it's something like that was a great scenario.
So, since we've decided this is just gonna be the first floor area, do we
I
want,
don't know, we decided.
well, okay,
Yeah.
if we have.
I like that.
I'm just thinking though, do we wanna change the percentage of the primary structure because it's really gonna limit it to be a lot smaller?
It is, it's a story.
I mean, you know,
That's why I said you gotta be careful about what you do, that's why we need to see some examples of
Okay.
You know what she's
What it
saying is
does.
it's gonna limit, she feels like it's gonna limit the matchbook size houses.
Well, you could have a single-story house, a two-story house, that's double story here,
Right,
and
or you could have a nice
they're,
sprawling ranch home,
they're both,
right, but it's a lot more.
they could have a lot bigger structure back there than the neighbor could, even though their
Yeah.
footprint is the same.
Yeah.
And there's nothing seems fair about that.
That doesn't seem fair, I agree.
well, and so, yeah, I think that needs to be addressed.
Well, I think you can do it either or, whichever is,
Yeah.
say you can have 500,
Like whichever is greater.
yeah, greater, I don't know.
Like ultimately, we just need to write it where it's
You gotta be, yeah.
as clean and concise as you can do.
You
Either
could
or,
still do it.
either or people will,
Well,
It's gotta
I
be
mean,
like a-
it's still a solid number though.
Yeah, but it,
I mean, cause I don't wanna,
it's like shall and will.
that's true, I don't want to increase this maximum though.
no, but I think we can deal with that, again, I think some of this can be taken care of based on the setback and things too. That's gonna have an impact on some of the ability to build this larger.
Because it'll create,
Oh, well,
yeah, it's gonna
it'd be
create
a little
the
footprint.
little footprint for, okay, this is what you
We
get.
just need to see it. I mean, it's really, we can talk about it all day long, but you can't look at things like this to kind of see how it really impacts it. It's very difficult, right?
And Larry, have we addressed the issue that you brought up very early on? That not all lots are the same size, so somebody buys the one odd lot in R50 that's a lot bigger. Not big enough to make two lots, but it's just,
There are some
Like
12,000
this,
square feet in
like
our
this.
5 zone.
That's the exact example.
Yeah.
so,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you tie it to the zoning district, it's still like not to exceed
Well,
500 square
if you
feet.
type the zoning district though, but you use the setbacks to limit it, and it's still based on the percentage of the structure, it doesn't really change much. See what I'm saying? In other words, if you have a R20 lot, you're gonna probably have a bigger structure.
Right, as long as we, but right now it says not to exceed 500 square feet.
Well, I think we're not looking
Yeah.
at those things.
Yeah, that's,
I'm in the same boat too. My neighborhood, most all the houses on my side of the street are like 8,000 square foot lots. Mine's 14,000 square feet. So again, it's just deeper, it's not wider, it's just deeper. But that's what allowed me to build the rear garage back there and things too. And still leave some space back there. But I think the key is the setbacks and how close we get to the neighbors and so forth based on height and square footage and not exceeding how much space it can take up and so forth. And still give them the freedom to do what they want with that sort of kind of thing. Give them the maximum we think we can give them. It doesn't become intrusive to the neighbor.
so what if someone comes in and they've got a plan, developer for a full development of 20, 30 houses. And everyone's uniform, they've all got the max height garage, 6 feet from the fence or whatever, so you're buying it going in knowing that your neighbor's garage is right here and because the whole thing is uniform. You can't say someone erected something and blocked your view, you went into the neighborhood knowing
Mhm.
this is, now you see that like with 0 lot line homes, it's like, or some of these homes that the backyard is this big, it's like, you bought it, you knew it,
Mhm.
like, what would we do with that? It's a perfectly nice development, but
Like,
They wouldn't have any options to
Yeah.
probably do
Yeah.
any of
Yeah,
this.
yeah, they could
you
do
go
it.
in knowing that you can't put an accessory structure
Yeah,
in
you
there.
can't put it back there, they couldn't do it that way anyway.
Probably not one of your recipe.
And again, it's gonna be unusual for the R50, those smaller lot,
Yeah.
to have rear structures back
Might have a lean to.
So in all these scenarios, we're really talking about residential to residential adjacent. Talk about residential to commercial, and you wanna hide that scenario. And that's kind of what they got right there, right?
That's what, because that one back there backs up to
Backs up,
commercial,
yes.
which, when I first saw it, I was like, well, commercial, who cares? But when I
Until you
see
go
it
to
in
the
the
front,
corner,
until you go to the front of the house, you're like, oh.
Yeah, then you're like,
It's
yeah.
still huge,
Yeah.
still huge.
Yeah,
So I
I don't
don't
think
think,
we ought to get caught
It's
up in where their butts. I think if we're gonna sit with property line issues, because we don't know how that'll develop later. We can redevelop again. So I think we're safer, but not get caught up in, at least I don't think we should. All right, I think you got,
We've got enough, we're gonna come back to you with a lot of information and probably pare it back based on your suggestions. We'll have additional exhibits, we'll probably need to look at PCA cases and
well, how long do you think it'll take to put some things together?
it's gonna take at least a couple weeks.
Well, once you get that, let me know and we'll see if
We'll go from there.
do something earlier than the next day.
Okay. Okay, we will.
Anybody else have anything else? Stop this one. All right. That's okay, we'll adjourn.
Thank you. The March meeting is March 18th. It's during, okay, our March meeting is during the week of spring break. We need quorum, so people need to be here. So this is your 2-month warning.
Are y'all gonna be, I'm gonna be here, who's gonna be gone?
Yeah, man.
You know me?